There has been an arrest in a 2004 Arkansas murder. I do want to preface this by saying if you saw the video that I made earlier about the DNA match, this is not that case. It seems like things really started to tense up in December of 2003 between a man named Leon King Jr., who went by JR, and David Burch. J.R. King lived in the Wheeling community there in Fulton County, and he and David Burch just headbutted. In December 2003, they got into a fight. In this fight, J.R. pulled a weapon on David and hit him with a car. Then in May 2004, David Burch's daughter went over to JR's house, and David went over there looking for his daughter, and there was a physical altercation where JR just beat the soup out of David Burch. So David Burch was taken to the hospital for treatment due to that fight, and JR was arrested and charged with assault and battery. On August 25th, 2004, JR had court on that assault and battery charge, and he was actually found not guilty, but ordered to pay David Burch $200. I don't understand it either. David Burch was not happy, and he talked about it and talked about it and talked about it to the people around him. Around 10:30 p.m. later that same evening, JR was at his home and he had a friend visiting. The friend's name was David Stone, but he went by Stoney. JR and Stoney were just hanging out that evening. They had made them some dinner and they were cleaning up after it. They were in the kitchen cleaning up. JR walked in front of the window and then Stoney walked in front of the window. But when Stoney walked in front of that window, a gunshot came in through that window and struck Stoney in his chest. Now, just before Stoney was shot, JR heard a pop and he did wonder what that pop was. And then Stoney was like, I have been shot. And JR really thought that Stoney was messing with him, and he was like, nuh-uh. And again, Stoney said, I have been shot. So JR said to Stoney, pull up your shirt. Stoney pulled up his shirt, and JR saw a hole just above Stoney's stomach. And guys, I don't know if you grew up in a time of unsolved mysteries, but I have seen an episode or two of Unsolved Mysteries where a person just gets shot through a window, and it has stuck out in my mind. So this is like my worst nightmare, honestly, to just be like minding your own business and then boom, you're shot. JR ran outside to see if he could see anything, and he didn't, but he shouted, "You son of bitches, you got the wrong one." Now, because he didn't see anything, he really felt like the person must have been on foot when they shot Stoney. That was in 2004. Stoney, unfortunately, did not make it. He died at the hospital from that gunshot wound, and there was a murder investigation that ensued. There were so many interviews that were done trying to figure out who it was that committed this murder. And of course, things really did center around David Burch and his issues with JR. I think police right away felt like it was probably someone who was after JR that just shot the wrong person. It stood out to police that people said Dennis Kingston, who was a friend of David Burch's, really had an issue with JR getting away with what he did to David Burch. What happened in court that day that Stoney was shot? People said that Dennis took it harder than David took it. Police interviewed Dennis repeatedly in 2004, 2005, and over the years. They decided to go back to that well in 2023 and really start honing in on Dennis Kingston. They asked him repeatedly what his story was, and first he said he was nowhere near. He said that he had gone to a pond that just happened to be across the road from where JR lived. He said that they went to go zero in a new firearm. He said that this person went with him or that person went with him. He was able to describe in detail the woods surrounding JR's house. And police really felt like he knows something, because you wouldn't be able to describe the woods in such great detail unless you had been in those woods. In 2024, police conducted 2 interviews with Dennis Kingston 2 weeks apart from each other. And in the second interview, Dennis Kingston finally came clean. He said that he posted up against a tree and he shot JR, or who he thought was JR, but it wasn't JR. He just fired at a shadow that happened to be Stoney. And Dennis Kingston kept his mouth shut because he was worried about a capital murder charge. In fact, he had asked a relative of his who taught law in California about capital murder and what he could be facing. But he did it without actually admitting to any sort of crime. It took 19 and a half years, but this past week, Dennis Kingston was finally arrested. He's been charged with first-degree murder and felony with a firearm.